welcome to another Explainer. Today, we're decoding the hidden economic engines driving modern tech platforms. We hear a ton about AI, algorithms, and apps, but how do these digital giants actually function as massive economic entities? We're going to explore the underlying theories of how capital shifted into the digital realm, how platforms operate as a highly unique business model, and what this all means for the future of our economy. So let's dive right in. We're starting off with a pretty fascinating economic mystery. Think about it. If you build a physical car, it obviously costs money in materials and labor to build a second one. But if you write a piece of software or train an AI, reproducing that digital file costs almost zero. Now, under basic free market competition, if something costs literally nothing to reproduce, its price should theoretically collapse to zero. But it hasn't. So why hasn't it? How exactly are companies built on zero marginal cost digital goods valued in the trillions? To answer that, the sources point us to a major structural shift in how revenue is actually generated. Traditional profit? That comes from manufacturing physical goods and selling them above cost. Simple enough. But Marxian economists argued that in the digital space, big tech operates completely differently. Instead of generating traditional profit, they enforce artificial scarcity through things like software locks, strict intellectual property rules, and endless subscriptions. By doing this, they extract what theorists call digital monopoly rent. They aren't simply selling you a discrete product anymore. They're essentially acting as digital landlords, charging us just for access to enclosed digital spaces. But why did capital flee the physical economy to become digital landlords in the first place? Well, to really grasp this, we need to look at Karl Marx's foundational distinction between two types of capital. First up is constant capital. Think machines, raw materials, or software. Marx called this dead labor. It's kind of like a discharging battery. A machine only transfers its stored, fixed value into a product as it wears down over time. Then there's variable capital, which is living human labor. In this theoretical framework, living labor is completely unique because human effort is the only thing that actually expands value beyond its own cost, creating surplus value. And that surplus, that is the ultimate secret origin of all capitalist profit. This dynamic leads us directly to the automation paradox. When a single factory replaces its workers with robots, sure, it makes huge short-term super profits by undercutting competitors. But when the entire industry automates, a systemic squeeze kicks in. The cost of that expensive machinery, that constant capital, absolutely explodes. Meanwhile, the pool of human-generated surplus value shrinks because, well, the workers were fired. Mathematically, this triggers what economists call the tendency of the rate of profit to fall. An industry can produce endless physical abundance, but it slowly squeezes its own profit margins to death in the process. And this severe profit squeeze leads to a massive structural crisis called overaccumulation. Essentially, the system accumulates immense amounts of surplus capital, but it can no longer be profitably reinvested in physical factories or traditional manufacturing. So what happens to all that capital? It flees. It dramatically abandons the stagnating physical economy and pours straight into speculative financial assets, real estate, and massive tech bubbles, relentlessly seeking entirely new, profitable frontiers. Section 1. The Platform Business Solution, Engineering Artificial Scarcity. So when making physical things stopped yielding those high profit rates, the economy needed a new model, one that was perfectly suited for a digital landscape where reproduction costs are basically zero. And the structural solution that capital found was the platform. Now, a platform isn't just a website or a piece of software. It's a revolutionary business model designed specifically to capture value. The playbook works in 3 steps. Step 1, enclose a shared digital infrastructure. Step 2, extract massive amounts of uncompensated data from users interacting within that space. And Step 3, charge digital rent to traditional businesses, sometimes called vassal capitalists, who now have absolutely no choice but to use that platform to reach their customers. Section 2. Nick Srnicek's 5 platform models. How to extract digital rent. So how is this model actually applied across different industries? In his book, Platform Capitalism, theorist Nick Srnicek identifies 5 specific types of platform business models designed to extract this digital rent. First up, we have advertising platforms, pioneered by giants like Google and Meta. Think about how often you use Google Maps or Instagram completely for free, right? The primary goal there is to maximize your engagement to extract your data. They take our daily digital interactions, convert them into highly valuable market intelligence, and then sell monetized access to those target audiences straight to advertisers. Second are cloud platforms, like Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure. These are essentially the utilities of the digital age. Instead of extracting value primarily through ads, they literally own the foundational physical infrastructure of the internet. It's really easy to think of the cloud as invisible, but it's actually made of massive earthbound data centers and server farms. These companies rent out this compute power and software environment to other businesses, effectively acting as landlords of the digital infrastructure, all while collecting vast amounts of cross-industry data. Third, we see this platform model moving out of the digital ether and right back into the heavy physical manufacturing world with industrial platforms. Companies like GE, with their Predix system, embed software, sensors, and microprocessors directly into heavy machinery. By doing this, they extract operational data for predictive maintenance and, crucially, they lock traditional industrial firms into their own proprietary hardware and software ecosystems. Fourth on the list are product platforms. This is where companies transform traditional physical ownership into a continuous, fee-based service, often called goods as a service. Imagine a multi-million-dollar jet engine being treated like a Spotify subscription. It sounds crazy, but that is exactly what heavy manufacturing companies like Rolls-Royce do by renting out jet engines by the hour instead of selling them outright. The manufacturer retains ownership, guarantees recurring subscription revenue, and maintains a continuous data feedback loop from the product. And finally, wrapping up our 5 models, we have lean platforms like Uber or Airbnb. These platforms act strictly as digital matchmakers. They are incredibly asset light, meaning they don't actually own the cars or the apartments themselves. Instead, they rely heavily on venture capital subsidies, hyper outsourcing, and classifying workers as independent contractors to keep their own costs near zero. They just sit right in the middle of a transaction, taking a percentage cut of the rent for facilitating the match. Section 3. The theoretical debate. Have we left capitalism behind? Having seen how these 5 diverse models operate to extract data and rent, a massive theoretical debate has emerged among modern thinkers. The structural changes are so profound that economists are now arguing over the true nature of this platform-driven economy, asking a huge question: have we left traditional capitalism behind entirely? This has become a clash of massive ideas. On one side, theorists like Yanis Varoufakis argue we've entered an era of technofeudalism, where markets have been replaced by private cloud fiefdoms, and platforms act as digital landlords extracting tribute. On the other side, critics like Yanis Varoufakis and Nick Srnicek argue that this is simply digital capitalism. They counter that rent extraction has always existed, and that big tech still relies on billions of dollars of capitalist investment in physical infrastructure and global wage labor. The contrast between these two camps is pretty stark. In the technofeudalism view, the primary mechanism driving the economy is pure rent extraction via proprietary platforms. The digital capitalism view, however, sees this as classic capital accumulation, just using new tools. In terms of assets, one side sees private cloud fiefdoms, while the other sees heavy traditional infrastructure and intellectual property. And most tellingly, how they view us, the users, differs completely. Technofeudalists view us as uncompensated cloud serfs working the digital land for free every single time we scroll, whereas digital capitalists view us as consumers and raw data sources in a hyper-monopolized but ultimately traditional market. You know what's genuinely mind-blowing? Over 150 years ago, in a text known as the Fragment on Machines, Karl Marx accurately anticipated this exact technological era. He described a concept called the general intellect, which is a future where humanity's collective scientific knowledge and expertise become physically frozen into automated systems and machines. Modern tech critics point out that today's AI models are essentially materialized human knowledge, the general intellect in action, being enclosed behind private paywalls so that tech giants can charge us rent. So how do theorists suggest we actually escape this paradox, where advanced technology creates artificial scarcity rather than abundance? Well, the sources point to a strategy called decommodification, basically stripping essential needs of their status as market assets. Imagine decommodifying housing through mass public models to guarantee shelter, or legally reducing the work week to free up human time as machines take over tasks. It also involves providing universal basic services like healthcare and transit, and perhaps most radically, turning cloud infrastructure and AI models into public digital utilities rather than private monopolies. As we face a future where technology could either lock us into digital fiefdoms and gig work precarity, or finally grant humanity free disposable time through the decommodification of basic needs, we want to leave you with this crucial question to consider. If generalized automation successfully replaces 50% of workplace tasks over the next decade, which of these economic policies should society prioritize first? Take a moment to really think about that. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring these vital questions.